Why your body stores fat faster after 40, and the exact hormone causing it. If you are over 40 and you are eating the same way you ate at 30, exercising just as much, sleeping roughly the same amount, and you are still gaining weight, specifically around your belly, your hips, and the back of your arms, I need you to understand something before you spend another $1 on a diet program or another hour feeling guilty about your willpower. It is not the calories, it is not the effort, it is not your discipline. It is your hormones. And one hormone in particular is running a biological program inside your body right now that is specifically designed to store fat faster, protect that fat more aggressively, and make every conventional weight loss strategy less effective than it was a decade ago. This hormone has been quietly shifting since your mid-30s, and by the time most people notice the changes in their body, the shift is already significant. Today I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside your cells after 40. The specific hormonal cascade that accelerates fat storage. The mechanism by which your fat cells after 40 behave completely differently from your fat cells at 25, and the precise biological strategy that works with this new hormonal reality instead of fighting against it, because fighting against it is exactly what most diet programs are designed to make you do, and fighting against it is exactly why most people over 40 fail to lose the weight and keep it off. Before we get into the hormone, you need to understand why fat storage after 40 is biologically different. Not just harder, but actually operating under a different set of rules than fat storage in your 20s and 30s. Your fat cells are not passive storage containers. They are endocrine organs. They produce hormones. They receive hormonal signals. They communicate with your liver, your brain, your pancreas, and your immune system in a continuous biochemical conversation that determines whether energy coming into your body gets burned or stored. And that conversation is governed by a signaling network that changes profoundly as you age. At 25, that network is running on a high sensitivity, high efficiency setting. Insulin, the primary metabolic gatekeeper, is produced in small amounts and received by your cells with high sensitivity. A modest insulin signal produces a large cellular response. Fat cells release energy readily. Muscle cells absorb glucose efficiently. The liver manages its fat load without accumulation. The system is finely tuned. By 45, that same network has been subjected to decades of insulin exposure, inflammatory signaling, and hormonal decline that has collectively pushed the system toward a lower sensitivity, lower efficiency setting. Your cells need more insulin to produce the same response. Your pancreas obliges. It produces more. Chronically elevated insulin locks fat inside fat cells. Muscle tissue absorbs less glucose. The liver begins accumulating fat, and a specific hormonal pattern emerges that researchers now identify as the primary driver of midlife weight gain. Not in men alone, not in women alone, but in virtually every adult after 40, regardless of sex, regardless of diet quality, regardless of exercise frequency. The hormone at the center of this is cortisol, not insulin, not estrogen, not testosterone, though all three play significant roles. Cortisol, the primary glucocorticoid stress hormone of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is the master conductor of the fat storage acceleration that begins after 40, and its role in midlife weight gain is far more specific, far more mechanistic, and far more actionable than most people have been told. Here is what cortisol does to fat storage that is unique to the post-40 biology. Your fat cells contain two types of cortisol receptors: glucocorticoid receptors that are present in all fat cells, and an enzyme called 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 1, or 11-beta-HSD1, that converts inactive cortisone into active cortisol directly inside the fat cell. This local cortisol activation system means your fat cells can generate their own cortisol environment, independent of your circulating cortisol levels. And here's the critical point. The activity of 11-beta-HSD1 increases with age, and it is dramatically higher in visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat surrounding your organs, than in subcutaneous fat. A 2004 study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that 11-beta-HSD1 activity in omental fat, the visceral fat depot in the abdomen, was significantly higher in obese adults and increased with age, creating a local cortisol environment in belly fat that was dramatically higher than circulating blood cortisol. Your belly fat is generating its own cortisol. It is creating the chemical environment that causes more fat to be deposited in exactly the same place. This local cortisol amplification in visceral fat does several things simultaneously. It increases the sensitivity of visceral fat cells to insulin, making them more efficient at absorbing glucose and converting it to stored fat. It suppresses lipolysis, the release of stored fat for fuel, specifically in the visceral depot. It promotes the differentiation of pre-adipocytes into mature fat cells, literally creating new fat storage capacity where none existed before. And it drives systemic insulin resistance by releasing free fatty acids and inflammatory cytokines from the visceral depot into the portal circulation, going directly to the liver. Why does cortisol increase after 40? This is the part most people never hear. What changes is the diurnal cortisol pattern, the daily rhythm that, in a healthy adult, shows a sharp morning peak followed by a progressive decline to a low evening baseline. After 40, this pattern flattens. The morning peak becomes less pronounced. The evening baseline rises. The result is chronically elevated evening cortisol, exactly the window when your body should be at its lowest cortisol state in preparation for sleep and overnight repair. Chronically elevated evening cortisol does three things that directly accelerate fat storage. First, it suppresses growth hormone release. Growth hormone drives lipolysis, the breakdown of stored fat for fuel, and maintains the ratio of lean mass to fat mass. Elevated cortisol suppresses growth hormone secretion through direct pituitary inhibition. A 2013 study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism confirmed that evening cortisol elevation significantly reduced growth hormone pulse amplitude during sleep, with the effect becoming more pronounced with age. Second, elevated evening cortisol disrupts the normal overnight insulin drop that allows fat mobilization during sleep. Cortisol drives hepatic glucose output. The liver releases glucose in response to cortisol, raising blood glucose and secondarily raising insulin. This overnight insulin elevation keeps fat cells locked in storage mode throughout the night. Third, chronically elevated evening cortisol disrupts sleep architecture, specifically reducing slow-wave sleep, the deepest stage when growth hormone is primarily secreted. Insulin sensitivity is restored, and hypothalamic appetite centers reset their sensitivity to leptin and ghrelin. Every night of disrupted sleep worsens the hormonal environment the following day. Cortisol rises slightly higher, growth hormone pulses become slightly smaller, insulin sensitivity becomes slightly more impaired. Over months and years, this daily compounding produces the metabolic signature of midlife weight gain. Reduce energy intake, insulin falls, growth hormone rises, lipolysis activates, and the fat deficit shows up on the scale. At 45, the same caloric deficit produces a different biological response. Reduce energy intake, insulin falls, growth hormone rises, lipolysis activates, and the fat deficit shows up on the scale. At 45, the same caloric deficit produces a different biological response. Cortisol rises in response to the energy restriction. Caloric restriction is a physiological stressor and activates the HPA axis. The elevated cortisol suppresses growth hormone, activates 11-beta-HSD1 in visceral fat, keeping fat locked in place, and drives muscle catabolism, the breakdown of lean muscle tissue for glucose. The result is that caloric restriction after 40 produces a disproportionate loss of lean muscle mass relative to fat mass, reduces resting metabolic rate, and creates the adaptive thermogenesis that makes the next diet attempt even harder. This is the mechanism behind why most people over 40 who diet repeatedly end up lighter but with a higher body fat percentage. Less muscle, the same or more fat as a proportion of body weight, and a lower metabolic rate. The biology calls it cortisol-driven muscle catabolism, combined with visceral fat preservation. Intense exercise creates the same problem when cortisol is already chronically elevated. In a 25-year-old, the cortisol spike of intense exercise is followed by a rapid recovery and the anabolic adaptations of growth hormone and testosterone. In a 45-year-old with already elevated baseline evening cortisol, the same session adds to an already excessive cortisol load. The anabolic response is blunted, the catabolic effects are amplified, and the visceral fat depot, dense with cortisol receptors and 11-beta-HSD1 activity, receives a strong signal to hold on. Here is what actually works with the post-40 hormonal biology rather than against it. The first and most important intervention is restoring the diurnal cortisol pattern, bringing evening cortisol down and protecting the morning peak. The most powerful lever is consistent sleep timing. A 2015 study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that irregular sleep timing, varying bedtime and wake time by more than 60 minutes across the week, was independently associated with higher visceral fat, elevated evening cortisol, and reduced insulin sensitivity, even in adults getting adequate total sleep hours. Consistent sleep timing within a 30-minute window every night is the single most powerful free intervention for restoring normal cortisol rhythm after 40. The second intervention is strategic resistance training over high-intensity cardiovascular exercise. Resistance training stimulates growth hormone release through a pathway significantly less cortisol-dependent than aerobic exercise. It builds lean muscle mass, the primary determinant of resting metabolic rate. It improves insulin sensitivity through GLUT4 upregulation. A 2019 meta-analysis in sports medicine found that resistance training produced greater improvements in insulin sensitivity, visceral fat reduction, and lean mass preservation than matched volumes of aerobic exercise in adults over 40. The third intervention is protein prioritization across the day. After 40, muscle protein synthesis rates decline, meaning more dietary protein is required to maintain the same muscle mass as at younger ages. A 2020 study in the Journal of Nutrition found that distributing 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight across 3 or 4 meals, rather than concentrating it in one large meal, produced significantly greater muscle preservation and fat loss in adults over 40. The fourth intervention is compressing the eating window into the first half of the waking day. A 2022 study in the Cell Metabolism found that time-restricted eating between 7 p.m. and 3 p.m. produced greater reductions in insulin resistance, visceral fat, and evening cortisol than the same caloric intake consumed between noon and 8 p.m. Eating earlier aligns food intake with peak circadian insulin sensitivity and growth hormone cycling, working with the biology instead of against it. Here is what I want you to carry out of this video. The fat that has been accumulating since your early 40s is not there because you stopped trying. It is there because the hormonal environment of your body changed in ways that make conventional fat loss strategies actively counterproductive. Cortisol is the master driver of that change, specifically through its local amplification in visceral fat via 11-beta-HSD1, its suppression of growth hormone during sleep, its overnight disruption of insulin cycling, and its cortisol-driven muscle catabolism in response to caloric restriction and intense exercise. Working with this biology means restoring diurnal cortisol rhythm through consistent sleep timing. It means shifting from high-intensity cardio toward progressive resistance training. It means prioritizing protein distribution across the day rather than total caloric restriction. And it means compressing the eating window into the first half of the waking day in alignment with circadian insulin sensitivity. None of these interventions require more willpower than what you have already been applying for years. They require a different understanding of what your body needs after 40. And that understanding, once you have it, changes everything. What is the one change you have noticed in your body after 40 that conventional advice has completely failed to explain? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe to the channel because next week, we are going deeper into the specific foods and meal timing strategies the research shows work best with the post-40 hormonal environment. And I will see you there.